This week on Mysteriously Disappeared, we look at the case of Harold Holt, the former Prime Minister of Australia. Holt is thought to have vanished in a normal swimming accident, but many believe other forces may have come into play to form the mystery. So, let's look at the mysterious disappearance of Harold Holt. Harold Holt was an Australian politician who served as the 17th Prime Minister from 1966 until his presumed death in 1967. Holt was born on August 5, 1908, at his parents' home in Stanmore, New South Wales, a suburb of Sydney, Australia. In 1927, Holt began studying law at the University of Melbourne, living at Queen's College on a scholarship. In 1933, Holt joined the Young Nationalist, the youth wing of the United Australia Party. Holt enlisted in the militia in February 1939, joining a part-time artillery unit for businessmen and professionals. He was given indefinite leave during his ministerial service. Holt was sworn in as Prime Minister on January 26, 1966. He won the leadership election unopposed, with William McMahon elected as his deputy. Mr. Holt followed Robert Menzies into high office. Within 3 weeks of his 22-month tenure, Mr. Holt began dismantling the White Australia policy, ushering in a new approach to Australian migration that no longer overtly discriminated based on race. The most significant shift was a provision to reunite well-qualified Asian immigrants separated from their immediate families for 15 years. The Holt government also welcomed certain qualified non-Europeans to Australia. Becoming treasurer after the 1958 election, he oversaw the creation of the Reserve Bank and the introduction of decimal currency, the Australian dollar. He convinced his cabinet to call it the dollar, not the suggested royal. Holt also championed the historic 1967 referendum that saw Aboriginal Australians counted in the census and gave Parliament the power to legislate concerning Indigenous people. Mr. Holt was the first Prime Minister to conduct regular press conferences and television interviews. He is also remembered for controversially ramping up Australia's commitment to the Vietnam War. After visiting the United States and meeting President Lyndon Baines Johnson, he popularized the phrase, "all the way with LBJ" in Australia. That same year saw 6,000 Australian soldiers sent to Vietnam. Former Labour Prime Minister Gough Whitlam, who spent years as one of Mr. Holt's main political adversaries, said of him, he was tolerant, humane, and broad-minded. His suavity of manner was no pose. On the contrary, it was the outward reflection of a truly civilized human being. Mr. Holt, age 59, departed Canberra on Friday the 15th. He flew to Melbourne on a RAAF VIP aircraft and later drove his maroon Pontiac Parisian to Portsea on the Mornington Peninsula for a relaxing weekend at his family home. Despite the growing controversy of the Vietnam War, Holt did not feel the need to surround himself with security. Zara, his wife, stayed behind in Canberra. It is believed Holt played tennis and relaxed with friends throughout Saturday. Then on Sunday morning, December 17th, 1967, he and a neighbor, Marjorie Gillespie, went to Point Nepean to watch the lone English yachtsman Sir Alec Rose sail through Port Phillip Bay Heads on his return journey to England. Alan Stewart followed them in a second car with Gillespie's daughter, Viner, 20, and her friend Robert Simpson, 19. Despite the blustery, muggy conditions, Holt wanted to swim in the private, exposed ocean at Cheviot Beach, rather than one of the more protected beaches in the bay. Holt changed into his swimming trunks and entered the surf shortly after midday. Witnesses claimed they saw Holt swimming out to sea when turbulent water suddenly built up around him and he disappeared. They called for help, and one of Australia's most extensive search and rescue operations was mounted. By nightfall, approximately 190 people were searching for the Prime Minister. He was officially presumed dead on December 19, 1967. The search was scaled down on the 22nd of December and officially terminated on January 5, 1968. However, Holt's body was never found. The most likely scenario was that Holt was caught in a strong rip off of Cheviot Beach and swept out to sea. Let's take a look at some of the theories of what happened to Harold Holt. The first theory is that he committed suicide. Former Prime Minister Harold Holt was deeply depressed 2 days before his disappearance over intrigue and treachery in government ranks. An article states Holt's briefcase left in his car at Cheviot Beach contained 4 highly confidential pages that have just been released by the National Archives. They reveal treachery by his friend and treasurer Billy McMahon, along with a threat by Holt to cut relations with Japan, which had just taken over from Britain as the #1 trading partner with Australia. In other ways too, Mr. Holt's world was unraveling. Veteran journalist Evan Whitten said the husband of Mr. Holt's last mistress, his Portsea neighbor Marjorie Gillespie, was rumored to divorce his wife and named the PM. That's why the PM acted so recklessly, diving into the treacherous tidal waters that morning without looking back, stated Whitten. Number 2, he faked his own death to run away with his mistress. It's also widely believed that Holt had been having an affair with Marjorie Gillespie. Zara Holt's memoirs confirmed that he had several extramarital affairs years later. Gillespie acknowledged that she'd had a long relationship with the Prime Minister. A report for the 9 Network Australia told of a man who claimed to be a former spook in the Australian government. He stated he helped Holt return to Australia several times since his disappearance. It's claimed that Holt swam to the next bay, hopped in a car driven by a lover, and slipped out of the country. The spook claimed that Holt died of a heart attack in southern France sometime during the 1980s. Number 3, an assassination. Holt wanted to withdraw Australian troops from the Vietnamese War. Some claim that he may have been the target of a government assassination. Some conspiracy theorists suggest he died of a botched kidnapping attempt. Yet another came in 1983 when a British author published a book claiming that Holt was a Chinese spy, picked up by a submarine, subsequently living out the rest of his life in Beijing, China. Whatever the case, Mr. Holt's body was never found. There are theories some knew where it was located. There was an Indian mystic, Dadi Balsara, who wrote a letter to the government soon after Mr. Holt went missing, suggesting he knew precisely where to find the body buried in the sand. The government did take notice, although I don't think it was followed through, and the body was never found. Several conspiracies surrounded the whereabouts of the Prime Minister's body, with one man at the time claiming he had been asked to take Mr. Holt's dead body the day before he officially disappeared and bury it. So, what do you think really happened to Harold Holt? Please leave your theories in the comments. Also, let us know whom you'd like us to investigate. Finally, don't forget to like the video, click the notification button, and subscribe so that you never miss an update about who mysteriously disappeared.